Director of the Sleep Center at Texan Methodist Hospital. So first of all, it's never good to start with an apology. I do apologize about the scrubs. I am a critical care doctor also, so I was called in at 4 in the morning. But you know, you have to see the lighter side of everything. Number one, it is a talk about sleep, and I'm basically wearing pajamas, so that's good. And number two, I'm sleep deprived. You know, I've been up since 4 in the morning, so it'll really tell us what sleep deprivation does on my presentation. So just to talk a little bit about what sleep is and how sleep has changed for us in the modern era. Previously, sleep was really embraced. It was something that was a reward at the end of the day. But in the modern era, we seem to think of it almost as a nuisance. Oh, I need to sleep, but I still have so much work to do. And quotes really reflect that, that are more modern. Sleep, that deplorable curtailment of the joy of life. So it's a nuisance. We're social people. You know, we tend to be on our phones at night. We have to be on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram. Some are shaking your heads like, no, I don't do any of that. Some of us have to, you know, catch up on Netflix or Hulu, HBO Go. You know, everybody wants to watch the newest episode of Game of Thrones, House of Cards, or whatnot. But, you know, we push back sleep. We have deadlines. We have to turn in reports, crunch the numbers, and everything pushes back our sleep. In front of you is also one of my sheets. That's it's called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. You don't have to put your name on that. That's just for you to see where you stack up in your sleepiness scale.
Where is that form?
It's the one with numbers and spaces on it. Okay. So by the end of this talk, we'll be able to talk a little bit about what sleep is, why we sleep, a little bit about sleep hygiene in the workplace, some modern sleep mistakes, and how to correct those. So one of my favorite photographers, and actually one of my favorite photos is this photo right here. It almost looks like an old Hollywood film, but it's really a photo of a country doctor. He's a doctor that made the choice to go into an urban area, and it was taken by W. Eugene Smith in Life magazine in 1948. And it follows this doctor along on a daily basis, taking pictures of when he had to tell, or when he thought he would have to mention that this little girl is going to lose her eye after an accident, or visiting a person with influenza at his home, or walking between those two home calls, back when doctors still did home calls. But this picture is really iconic to me because it epitomizes what sleepiness is. If we look at the photo and we observe him, we can see he has many telltale signs of what sleepiness is. We can see the forehead wrinkled, by the eyebrows that are tented up, trying to keep his eyes open as they droop, his head forward, his posture slouched back, obviously with coffee and cigarette in hand. So this was taken at 2 in the morning after he'd been up all day after surgery. And to me, it really just tells us what sleepiness is. It's the lack of sleep. But what is sleep? It's hard to describe, it's hard to actually define, but one of my favorite definitions is this. It's a period of inactivity of the body and a change in activity of the mind where volition and consciousness are either partially or completely suspended. And we didn't know how to quantify sleep until very recently. Before, the things that we would do to see if someone was asleep was we would give them a button to hold. When that button is released, we think, okay, they're falling asleep. We would put things in their hands. If they dropped them, okay, this is when sleep started. And we also had patients count when they stopped counting. We also had patients at 30-second intervals say a word in their internal clock, not with another clock. And then if they stopped saying it, we would think that that was when the patient slept. But it wasn't until we developed the EEG, and this is Hans Berger who developed it, that we knew exactly when sleep happened. Every time I read a sleep study, I know exactly when a patient goes to sleep. And fast forward some years, we understand that people sleep in cycles. And we're not very smart in the sleep community, so we named it 1, 2, and 3 sleep. It's basically what it's called, followed by REM sleep. And I think everybody's heard of the term REM sleep thrown around. That's that dark area that is spaced by the steps. And you don't have to understand that graph, but what you do need to know is that we have these cycles that occur around every 90 to 120 minutes. We go into stage 1, 2, 3, and then REM sleep, and then we repeat it again. So where are most of us on this scale? Maybe get 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. On a good day, sometimes more, sometimes less. You're really chopping off all the sleep cycles that you should be having. And it's really all about time. We don't have time. If we're lucky, we'll get to be 99 or maybe more. We'll meet our favorite football player. He might sign a football for us. And if we're an average person, 34% of that time is asleep. So that turns out to be 33 years where you're not doing much. But it's very important. And we know it is. But we still have this bad outlook on sleep. It's such a luxury, I can't afford it. We tend to occupy the nights and prolong our days when we really should be asleep. And we all know when we're asleep. We've been in meetings, and maybe we sense something to our right, and we're saying, it's Bill again, he's falling asleep. We might get mad, look over and confirm it. And then if we're nice, we'll lean forward to block him so nobody else can see him. And it happens to all of us. It happens to our pets, to our children, sometimes at the same time. And it's all a very modern type of idea. It's this extension of the day through artificial light. And Thomas Edison said, I owe my success to the fact that I never had a clock in the workroom. 75 of us worked 20 hours a day and slept 4 hours. We thrived on it. But, that's not the mentality that we should have. We know that sleep is very important, and there's varying theories of why. I think the most fascinating part about sleep for me is that we don't know why we sleep. And that's very interesting. There's all these theories. One of them is that we restore things. We use up energy throughout the day, and then the nighttime is to restore those deplenished levels. We conserve energy. We're inactive, so we don't use up as much of our calories. And also consolidation, which is my favorite, tells us that all these things that we learn throughout the day are consolidated at night. All the new tasks we learned, memories, everything just comes together at night. And we know what lack of sleep does. We know we can have lapses in attention, slower reaction time, impaired anticipation, also issues with planning and judgment. 20% of accidents are due to drowsy driving. And history tells us this. Some of the biggest disasters were caused by not sleeping enough. The Exxon Valdez, we all remember that. The third mate was actually in charge of the boat from certain reports. He was found asleep. He was pulling a 15-hour shift. 3 Mile Island, also lack of sleep due to shift work. Does anybody know what this one is? Chernobyl. And then everybody knows what this one is. All these tragedies, which are due to us not respecting sleep and getting our sleep when we can. Excessive hours, while admirable, raises serious questions when it jeopardizes job performance. And that's from the actual report after the incident review. So I think we can probably agree that sleep is important, but how much sleep is what we should have? And it really depends on how old you are. Starting to the left with a newborn and then to an older adult. The blue numbers coming down is the recommended, and then the teal above and below may be okay. So as we see a newborn, 14 to 17 hours, going to an infant, toddler, preschool, school age, teen, young adult, and adult, all the way to older adult, about the same, okay? And do we get that much? I know I don't. We get around 6.8 hours, depending on what you read, where you read it, and many of those, 21%, actually get 6 hours or less. And it's really an epidemic also in our teenage kids who have schoolwork to do, stay up all night, wake up at 7 in the morning or whenever they wake up, and they're very limited. The other thing is that one thing that is a difference is that you need to be, or rather, if you're a male or a female, there is a difference. There is a scientific difference in who needs more sleep. Does anybody want to chime in, man or woman? Nobody wants to chime in, that's good. So females, per research, need 30 minutes more of sleep. So a doctor told you that, you can tell that to anyone if they tell you otherwise. Just say, no, I need my 30 minutes more right now. And that's scientific evidence that tells us this. But is it the time or is it the quality? And it's really both. When we talk about quality, we're going to talk about one of two things. The snorers who say, oh, my sleep is fine, and just snoring up a storm. And then the people who can't initiate or maintain sleep. So that first part of it, snoring. Snoring is very common. Pretty much everybody has snored at some point in their life. Habitual snoring, snoring pretty regularly, is found in about 24% of females and 40% of men. We do know that with time, snoring does increase. So with age, and we also know that alcohol, anything that relaxes you, narcotics, muscle relaxants, will all play a factor into that snoring. And we really don't know if snoring by itself is going to hurt you. Some people say yes, some people say no. But the reason why snoring is important is that it's the cardinal sign of obstructive sleep apnea. And I think we're not doing our job in making sure that everybody knows about obstructive sleep apnea. It's really an epidemic, especially here in Texas. So what is obstructive sleep apnea? And I think I can describe it, but it's probably easier to show you. And to some people this might be funny, but to me it's very serious. You can tell this person is struggling to breathe at night. And snoring, in his case, is actually good because that means that air is coming in and out. But this whole time I've been talking, you don't hear anything. But watch his belly. His belly is still moving, and it's moving even harder and harder. He's trying to breathe, but he can't. That's obstructive sleep apnea. Still talking, and he still hasn't taken a breath. That whole time. Still waiting. And he starts breathing. And he breathes quick to get his oxygen back in his body. And this is a severe case, but they're pretty common. So sleep apnea is basically snoring to the point where you're not breathing anymore. And we see that approximately 24% from the snorers, 40% down to 24%, 9% of women will have OSA, which is obstructive sleep apnea. If you add sleepiness, then it's a little bit lower. So in other words, symptomatic obstructive sleep apnea. A lot of people may have it, but they might not know. They just maybe don't feel as rested as they did before. But a lower percentage, about 5% of males and 3% of females, again higher in Texas, will have sleep apnea along with sleepiness. So the same as snoring, sleep apnea will increase with age, even though symptoms might not be as prevalent. People just say, oh, I'm getting older, this is my sleep. But in reality, it's that they're having poor sleep. The major thing that we see with sleep, as we saw in this gentleman, is obesity. But there are other issues that are also very important. And why do we care about sleep apnea? If that little video didn't show you that people struggle to breathe, and that has very, very serious consequences. And there's a study in Wisconsin of school workers just like yourself. It's actually the biggest plot of data we have for sleep, or one of the biggest ones, where they keep on crunching the numbers every few years. And we do see year after year that sleep apnea is associated with higher mortality. 3 times of what we would expect. So it's very serious. It's associated with high blood pressure, heart failure, and stroke. Some very famous people, even athletes, Reggie White, he died of complications of sleep apnea, and actually has the Reggie White Foundation, which the sole purpose of that foundation is to help people with sleep apnea obtain treatment and diagnosis. Who's that? Does anybody know? Yeah. He was found with his CPAP machine unplugged. Now, I don't know, there was never an autopsy, so we don't know if that was the prime issue, but he fits the phenotype, in other words, the appearance of someone that may have sleep apnea, and he has diagnosed sleep apnea, wasn't wearing his machine that night. So how do we know if we're at risk? You have a little bit of paper there, you can count out how many of these is you. Do you snore? Are you tired or sleepy? Does anybody ever tell you, oh, I stopped breathing, my husband or wife has to nudge me? Do you have high blood pressure? And then it's called the stop bang, and on the bang part, are you overweight or obese? Are you over 50? Your neck circumference, and if you're a male. Also included this is postmenopausal women. So if you add those up and you're more than 3, you should be evaluated. Now we come to the next one, and it's the form that some of you might have filled out, some of you haven't. And it basically tells us if today you are sleeping. So you'll go through these, and you can do this on your own time, and you're going to put 1, 2, or 3 points, mild, moderate, or severe. 1, 2, and 3. If you're sitting and reading, how likely is it for you to doze off? If you're watching TV, if you're sitting and active in a public place, as a passenger in a car, lying down to rest in the afternoon, sitting and talking to someone you know, sitting quietly after lunch, and in a car stopped in traffic. You go through that, you add up the points. If you're above 9, you're sleeping. Okay? And that could be many things, but it warrants an evaluation. But speaking of sleep apnea, this is what we do. Unfortunately, we put all these wires on you, put all these things on your head, and then tell you, okay, go to sleep. And obviously, it's very difficult. But we've come a long way, and we can do a home sleep test. For people who qualify, you need to have a high likelihood of having it, but it's just one belt, one probe on your finger, and then a nasal cannula. And that's enough to diagnose. The treatment for sleep apnea is CPAP. Some people might have heard that. There's another machine called BiPAP. And this is not an actual machine. This is one of the first machines. The first machines were actually vacuum cleaners, just turned in the opposite direction. Instead of sucking, they would blow and keep the airway open. But that's the way these were devised. But now they're a lot more quiet, they're a lot more modern, they're a lot smaller. And we all see this sometimes in movies and things. It's the mask, and nobody loves this, and they say, oh, I'll never put that on my face. But again, masks are smaller, they're easier to wear. You don't have to wear the Darth Vader mask. It can be a smaller mask, such as this one, which is called a nasal pillow. And the point of all this is to relieve that obstruction. On the left, you have someone where no air is getting out because of that obstruction. And on the right, we can see that air can flow in and out very readily, thus resolving the apneas. If you're in the second part of these people, the snorers, and now the people who just can't sleep for some reason, we call that insomnia. And insomnia can be one of 3 things. I can't fall asleep, I can't stay asleep, or I'm waking up too early. One thing that I should probably leave out, because it's an interesting point of history, is that we actually think that we slept in 2 periods. You know, when there wasn't electricity, when there was just lamps and, you know, fires and whatnot, we would come home after a long day at work, sun's down, go to sleep at 7, wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. People would be up for 1 or 2 hours, and then they would sleep again. So it was a 2-sleep type of history, and it's in a lot of literature and you know, in Shakespeare's time. We see it mentioned at first sleep and second sleep. So some people might be, oh, that's what I do. Well, there might be a reason for that. But modern times, we tend to sleep 10 to 6. But 35% of people can't. They have issues either falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up way too early. So one of the first things that we always talk about is that you have to keep a consistent schedule. No matter if you're on vacation, no matter if you're on the weekend, it has to be consistent. Your body has to know what time it's time to go to sleep and what time it's time to wake up. There's a phenomenon called social jet lag that basically is when people stay up too late and then they sleep in, so then the next day they wake up late and that night they can't get to sleep. So as the more we try to stick within our times, the better our sleep will be. Don't ever get into bed unless you're sleepy. I have some patients that tell me, Doc, I'm in bed and I just toss and turn for 3 hours. I can't go to, well, what time are you getting to bed? 7. Okay, what time do you fall asleep? 10. What time do you wake up? 6. Do you feel rested when you wake up? Yes. You're going to bed way too early. So don't fall asleep unless you think that you're going to go to sleep. If you can't, get up. Don't go to your iPad. Don't go to your iPhone. Don't go to your tablet. Don't turn on the TV. Keep everything dark. Okay? In fact, if you can, keep the TV out of the room. And you saw my title in the beginning, this concept of paleo sleep. It's really trying to make your room as much as a cave as it can be. Okay? You need to make sure that your area is safe, make sure your area is dark and cool. So we see the safe part of it. You have to relate to your bed as where you're going to sleep. You just can't worry in bed. I sit in bed worrying about my cousin, about what work or whatnot. You can't do that. If you're going to worry, get out of bed. Get out of bed. Keep a worry journal out of the bedroom. So you have to consider your bed as your sanctuary. Everything's taken care of. This is where I come to sleep. Again, don't take your work to bed. Don't even see your bedroom if you can. So bed is meant for sleep and obviously to be with your significant other. So dark. This concept of having lights all day. We get home, there's lights all over the place. It suppresses melatonin. And melatonin is one of the cues we need to fall asleep. We stare at our iPads and iPhones and everything has blue light, which actually suppresses melatonin. So we get home and our body doesn't know it's nighttime. Our body doesn't know that the sun went down because the temperature is the same. And certain companies have become very keen to this. So if you all have your iPhones, how many iPhones here? Okay, about half. So if you have your iPhones, the newest iPhone download, or the actual, whatever you call it, the iOS update, there you go, actually has a night mode, which eliminates blue light, and it's meant to eliminate that staring in your face when you're trying to go to sleep. So all you do is go to the display and brightness part of it, and it's called night shift. You just turn it on, it's 10 p.m., your phone changes to a night mode. So, and other companies are doing this. If you don't have an iPhone, Twitter does this. It has a night mode which eliminates blue light also. People who have Kindle Fires also has a blue light filter. Before we had this, we actually had screen protectors that eliminated the blue light. So you could have done that. But now everybody knows that this blue light is going to make you stay up. And your body needs to be cool, but not necessarily cool. It needs to change temperatures. So again, you're outside, you come home, and it's the same temperature. We want to be comfortable in our homes. So the easiest way to overcome this is to take a bath at night. You can still take a shower in the morning, but take a bath at night. The temperature will heat your body, and your body will feel that, and then it'll cool down when you get out of the bath. And the body knows, okay, the sun's down, I'm in a dark place, I'm safe, it's time to go to sleep. You have to go back to the caveman or cavewoman in you in order to make sure that you're enjoying your sleep and getting to bed the way you're supposed to. Caffeine. Everybody uses caffeine. 85% of people use caffeine. One thing that you don't know is that caffeine can last in your system a pretty long time. The half-life is 6 hours. So if you're enjoying that coffee at 5 p.m., trying to go to bed, it's not going to work. Quick quiz, which one has the most caffeine? So a lot of maybe Coca-Cola, a lot of all of them. It's actually the Diet Coke. Diet Coke has 20% more caffeine. Okay, so comparing a Red Bull, I don't see too many Red Bull or Monster drinkers in here, maybe one or two. But compare a Monster to Starbucks. What has more? A Grande. So a 16-ounce Monster has 160. Your Grande coffee from Starbucks that we all love, 550. That takes time to get out of your system. And if you don't know if your drink has caffeine in it, you can always go to caffeineinformer.com. It's not mine or anything. It's just a good place to go. Also, chocolate has caffeine in it. Decaf coffee has caffeine in it. Okay, that's it has about 10, so comparable to a 50 of a Diet Coke, it's less, depending on the size, obviously. But it does have caffeine. It's the same thing as when you buy turkey and it says 50% lower sodium. Well, 50% starting at really high. So I'll finish up with a couple of kind of recap. These are a couple of my Twitter posts. We know that 37 million American adults snore regularly. We all know that it's one of the cardinal signs of sleep apnea, so that would be something to seek advice if that's happening. Bright light is one of the biggest triggers on our brain to stay awake. So eliminate the light, change your phone to night mode, your Fire, your Twitter, whatever you're doing. Napping is great. Everybody loves napping, but napping is 20 minutes. Okay, people tell me I take a nap in the afternoon. How long is your nap? 3 hours. That's sleep. You're not napping. So try to avoid sleep and try to get the most 10 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But any sleep you have in the afternoon is gonna push away sleep at night. So we really like to consolidate your sleep. Sleep is a debt that we have to pay at night. If you start paying at 1 or 2 p.m. and take that nap, you're not going to have enough to pay at night. So think of sleep as a debt, and you have to pay it at night. Don't do it during the day. Okay, we talked about when you can't sleep in bed, get out of bed, give yourself 20, 30 minutes. Don't watch the clock, because that's one of the things people do. They look at a clock, oh, it's 1 in the morning, just get out of bed. Do something that's relaxing. Don't go to your phone, don't go to your iPad, get back into bed. Okay, and then we talked about social jet lag, staying up too late, and then recuperating the next day will push away sleep. And then staring at your clock, as I said, is not healthy. You shouldn't do it. We talked about TV or tablets, and then alcohol. And alcohol is known to make you sleepy. It helps you initiate sleep. Unfortunately, the sleep that you do have is poor quality sleep. If you have sleep apnea, it's going to make that worse. So we have to be worried about that. So I do have to say that all of this is information. It's not meant to be medical advice, but it's information that I think everybody needs to know about sleep. I did see that nobody fell asleep, so I'm very happy about that. It's an accomplishment. So I want to thank you very much, Ms. Foster, and everybody else for bringing me in.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.